How many feel like you were left to raise yourself in certain areas? Yeah, but in those certain areas, that's what father's supposed to be. You know, um, how many can say that it affected you, so bad that either you got on drugs or you gave up? Anybody like really get frustrated? Anybody want to explain that? How you just really got frustrated?
Well, I just started smoking weed at 15, and after that, it was a wrap. I was smoking weed like every day, before school, after school. If you kind of give up, I stopped going to school. You stop going to school, you stop caring about grades, you stop caring about relationships in general. Almost, it's almost like if you can't have family relationships, it's hard to have relationships out of the family. And then you might have one or two best friends, but when something goes wrong with them, it's like a real big deal. But yeah, just smoking a lot of weed and then drinking, trying to drink at 13 and stuff, like just getting drunk when you go out. It's crazy.
Yeah, my father couldn't go to any of my sports events because he said that he had just got off work, he was tired. And so I got to the place, I said, forget it. He don't care, I don't care. So I actually started drinking at about 15, 14, maybe even 13. Maybe 13, and started smoking weed about 16, and just completely gave up because he wouldn't come to any of my events. Um,
It's the same with me too.
yeah. Then I would play basketball outside. I would see him look outside the window, to see me shooting. But I used to say, "Will you just come out and hug me and tell me you love me?" And he never did. So I eventually gave up based on. And now he was in the house, but he wasn't a father. And I understand he had his own issues, but I believe that as men, we shouldn't even have sex if we got a bunch of issues because it's going to affect the kids.
For me, it really affected me as a kid because I never got to play sports. It was something that I really wanted to do. Like all my friends were either on some type of football team or played for the school or whatnot, and it affected me because I couldn't. And so there, I gave up, and I was just like, fine, I'm gonna find something else to do. And then that's when I got involved with drinking and whatnot, and that got me kicked out of school and started. It was
How many of us
downhill.
got kicked out of school at least once? Suspended, kicked out, same. That's the effect of not having a strong father there to teach you. It's frustration.
But yeah, that's kind of where like everything started going downhill once I started drinking, and I was only 15, so and I didn't stop probably till like I was like 19.
Yeah, as far as me, I don't, I didn't know it affected me because my grandma used to try to keep my dad, like the thought of my dad and all that, away from me for so long. I didn't. I met her when I was 7 at a funeral, and when he came in, my mom was like, "Slide over so your dad can sit down," because I was laying down in the pew. She was like, "Slide over so your dad can sit down," and I looked up. I was like, "That ain't my daddy." And my grandma heard me, so after the funeral, she took me home and whooped me, cause saying that I was embarrassing the family and stuff like that. I was like, I ain't know it was my daddy. So then this, yeah, then this random guy just starts taking me to breakfast on Saturdays and like this is supposed to be bonding time. Like I don't know you, so I was just like, okay, whatever. I like to eat, so I'm gonna eat. And then he started buying me drum stuff. I like drums. So I was like, okay, cool. He just became another person in the world to me. Like I still don't know him now. It's just like he's just another person. I ain't got nothing against him.
How often do you talk to him?
Last time I talked to him was probably about 2 months before I came out here. Yeah.
So tell me this: did it affect you with submitting to male authority?
Nah, my grandma said I'ma submit or she gonna kill me. So
In your generation, when you don't have a father, you tend to let hip hop become your father, or it could be television, or now little kids are into reality shows. Something is going to teach you. That's why I love in Proverbs, the Song of Solomon keeps talking about fathers. You know, teach your son. Fathers, receive instructions from your father, not from each other, and not from yourself. You can't teach yourself how to be a man.
I think Easy E was my main influence.
Who?
Easy E.
Okay, what was he about? Only thing I know is that he was part of a group called Nigga with Attitude, so I'm sure you had an attitude.
Yeah,
and then he died of AIDS. That's all I know. So can you help me?
I just think he was like considered like the ladies' man, but also like kind of like smooth, but like almost like the realest gangster that ever was around. Easy E. He was a little short dude, and he just seemed like an OG short dude. So that was what I thought was cool.
I guess with me it was more everything was from the streets. My dad was in and out my life, like gaps, months, years missing. So I remember some good memories of him, some great Christmases, stuff like that. Then I remember years when he said he was going to come and he never came. Yeah, those were the biggest, I think, memories that stuck with me, the ones that he didn't do, when the times when I waited for him and he didn't come after work and stuff like that. So everything else was just learning from friends. Like Brooklyn is everybody's tight. You got 5 or 6 friends that hang out together. So this guy doing sports, we do sports. This guy got girls, we go. You know what I mean? We going to the club, we doing this and that. So a big influence from drugs, drinking, everything was just being around it so much that it became an influence.
Not having a father influenced everything. Like you say, for negative and for positive. I think the only positive was just that I had so many examples of what not to do, or just so many examples of wrong. I just kind of somewhere wanted to be right. I didn't really know how, but that was probably the only positive. But the negative side of it is just, you go from being a hurt child to a angry, I guess, what is it, adolescent, teenager, and then just into a frustrated, of age adult, I guess you could say. Like, it's this big gap. It's a big identity crisis. I think one thing a father does is kind of affirm you in who you are. And without that, you kind of have a whole world of decision of who to be. And so, that that can be crazy, man, especially going through grade school, public school. There's so many images, there's so much to be and all of that. And so I think the biggest thing for me that kind of took me down a crazy road was just the opposite sex, females. I got that from straight music, BET, all of that. Ended up a teenage parent. So just like I said, man, just not having that guidance, that affirmation, that you don't really have that confidence when, you're on the basketball team and, the other players' dads are at the game. It's just you. I thank God I had an uncle who kind of kept me straight, but for the most part, man, it's just you. You kind of on your own, like, in a sense. So
Yeah, well, how it affect me today, I used to struggle with my identity. Didn't really know how to be social with people. I don't know, the only thing that I really used to depend on was music. That was the only consistent thing in my life. Like, my grandma was always up and down, and my granddad, he worked all the time. He was there. Like, he always was, like, the dominant. So my grandma never went over his head. So I always knew the man was supposed to be, like, the head or whatever. But music was the only consistent thing that I had in my life. That's why I just find comfort in just being around music, listening to music. It's not that I don't like people. It's just that if like a whole bunch of stuff going on and I don't feel like dealing with it or I don't want to hear about it, I just go in the room and listen to music. That's where I find my peace at.
Anybody else did that growing up? Oh, wow. And so that was your instructor.
How it affected me today, recently I went back to my parents' house to visit, and I paid attention to how they acted and mannerisms they had and how they talked and everything, and it showed me why I talk the way I talk, why I do things that I do today that I sometimes don't even know I do. just by observing my father, observing my family, I saw it in me. I could see how it affected me because I learned it from them. Even if I wasn't trying to, I just picked up their behaviors, and good or bad.